My sister made my 8-year-old daughter sit in a freezing garage on Christmas Eve while everyone else ate dinner inside. 28 degrees. 3 hours. And I didn't bring her in. I sat out there with her. I held her shaking little body against mine on that cold concrete floor, and I let her cry until she had nothing left. I let her see the truth about the people we called family. I let her understand, in a way no child should ever have to, that blood doesn't mean love, that a grandmother can look the other way, that an aunt can be cruel enough to exile a little girl to a garage in the dead of winter because she was too quiet at the dinner table. And when my daughter finally fell asleep against my shoulder, her breath making little clouds in that freezing air, I made one phone call. The next morning, everything changed. My name is Jolene Draper. I'm 34 years old, and I've spent most of my life being the kind of person who keeps the peace, the one who apologizes even when I did nothing wrong, the one who drives 90 minutes through holiday traffic to spend Christmas with people who barely tolerate me, just because my mother expects it, just because that's what family does. I work as a dental hygienist at a small family practice in Columbus, Ohio. I've held that job for 9 years. I'm good at it. I'm good at making people feel comfortable, at calming nervous patients, at reading a room and knowing exactly what someone needs to hear. I spent my whole life learning how to smooth things over, how to make myself smaller so other people could take up more space. That skill kept me employed. It kept me sane through a divorce when my daughter was barely 2 years old. It kept me showing up to family gatherings year after year, swallowing every insult, every dismissive comment, every time my older sister made me feel like I was somehow less than her. But that skill almost cost me my daughter. Willa is 8 years old. She has her father's brown eyes. And my stubborn streak, though it shows up differently in her. She's quiet, observant, the kind of child who watches everything and says very little, who draws pictures in the corner of a room while the adults talk, who takes a long time to warm up to new people. Some people call that shyness. My sister called it something else. Willa has anxiety. We've been working with a therapist for 2 years now. She's made so much progress. She can order her own food at restaurants. She can raise her hand in class. She can make eye contact with adults she doesn't know well, even if it takes her a few minutes to get there. But to my sister Tamsin, none of that mattered. To Tamsin, Willa was a problem, an inconvenience. A weird little girl who made everyone uncomfortable because she didn't bounce around the room like her own children, demanding attention and getting it. Tamsin is 4 years older than me, 38. She lives in a 4-bedroom house in the suburbs with her husband Boyd and their 2 kids, Griffin and Sutton. She hosts every holiday, every birthday, every family gathering, not because she's generous, but because it gives her control. When you're in Tamsin's house, you play by Tamsin's rules. And if you don't like it, you're welcome to leave. Boyd is a real estate developer. He makes good money and Tamsin spends it freely. Their house looks like something out of a magazine. White furniture, white carpets, white walls with carefully curated art. Everything perfect. Everything pristine. Everything cold. My mother, Francine, lives with them now. Has for 3 years, ever since my father passed. Dad was the one who kept the family together, who made sure Tamsin didn't run roughshod over everyone who actually saw me. When he died, something shifted. Tamsin stepped into the vacuum he left behind, and my mother let her. Maybe she was too tired to fight. Maybe she agreed with Tamsin more than she ever let on while Dad was alive. Either way, I became invisible, to my own mother. And Willa became something worse than invisible. She became a target. I should have seen it coming. The signs were there for years. The way Tamsin would sigh when Willa didn't immediately respond to a question. The way she'd make comments about how her own kids were so social, so outgoing, as if Willa's quietness was a personal failing I should have fixed by now. The way my mother would purse her lips when Willa clung to my leg at family gatherings, as if my daughter's need for comfort was somehow embarrassing. 2 years ago, Willa accidentally spilled punch on Tamsin's white carpet. It was an accident. She was 6 years old and someone bumped her arm, but Tamsin screamed at her in front of everyone, called her clumsy, careless, said she should have known better than to carry a full cup across the room. Willa cried for an hour. I apologized over and over. I paid to have the carpet cleaned. And still, Tamsin brought it up at every family gathering after that. Every single one. As if my daughter had committed some unforgivable crime instead of being a normal child who had a normal accident. I should have stopped going. I should have protected my daughter from these people years ago. But I kept telling myself it would get better. I kept telling myself that family was important, that Willa needed to know her grandmother, that I could manage Tamsin if I just tried hard enough. I was wrong. Griffin is 12 now. Sutton is 10. They're not bad kids, not really, but they've learned cruelty from their mother the way some kids learn table manners. They know how to deliver an insult with a smile. They know how to exclude someone while making it look accidental. They know that Willa is different, and they've been taught that different means less than. Last Christmas, I overheard Griffin tell Willa that she was creepy, that her staring made everyone uncomfortable, that nobody actually wanted her there, but they had to invite her because her mom would throw a fit otherwise. Willa didn't tell me. She never tells me when they're mean to her. She just gets quieter, smaller, more afraid. I found out because I walked into the room at the wrong moment, or maybe the right moment. Griffin didn't even look embarrassed. He just shrugged and walked away like insulting an 8-year-old was the most normal thing in the world. I told Tamsin. She said Griffin was just being honest. She said maybe if Willa tried harder to fit in, the other kids would like her more. I should have left that day. I should have packed up my daughter and driven home and never looked back. Instead, I apologized for making a scene. I told Willa to try to play with her cousins. I spent the rest of the evening pretending everything was fine. That's who I was. That's who I'd always been, the peacekeeper, the apologizer, the one who sacrificed her own dignity and her daughter's well-being on the altar of family harmony. This Christmas was supposed to be different. Willa had been doing so well. Her therapist said she was making real progress. She was less anxious, more confident. She'd been practicing conversation starters in the weeks before Christmas, little scripts we'd worked on together so she'd have something to say when the adults asked her questions. She made handmade ornaments for everyone, spent hours on them. Little painted wooden circles with everyone's names, decorated with glitter and tiny drawings. She was so proud of them. She wrapped each one carefully in tissue paper and put them in a special bag to carry into Tamsin's house. On the drive there, she held that bag in her lap like it contained something precious. And it did. It contained her hope that this year would be different, that if she tried hard enough, if she was good enough, they would finally love her the way she deserved to be loved. I looked at her in the rearview mirror, this beautiful, brave little girl who had done nothing wrong except be born sensitive in a family that saw sensitivity as weakness. I squeezed the steering wheel and told myself it would be okay. We would get through this together. A few hours with my family, and then we could go home to our little apartment and have our own Christmas. Just the two of us. I had no idea what was waiting for us. I had no idea that in a few hours, my daughter would be sitting on a freezing garage floor, crying into her untouched plate of food, while the people who were supposed to love her laughed and celebrated 20 feet away. I had no idea that this Christmas would be the last one I ever spent with my mother and sister. But I'm getting ahead of myself. We pulled up to Tamsin's house at 4 o'clock. The decorations were perfect. As always, lights outlining every window, a wreath on the door, one of those expensive inflatable snowmen on the lawn that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. I turned off the car and looked at Willa. She was clutching her bag of ornaments, her eyes fixed on the house. "You ready, baby?" She nodded, but I could see the fear flickering behind her eyes. She wanted so badly for this to go well. She wanted so badly to belong. I reached back and squeezed her hand. "We've got this, and no matter what happens in there, I'm proud of you. You know that, right?" "I know, Mama." "Okay, let's go see Grandma." We walked up the path together, my daughter's small hand in mine. The door opened before we even reached it. Tamsin stood there in a cream-colored sweater and perfectly pressed slacks, her smile as tight and practiced as everything else about her. "You're late," she said. We were 7 minutes early, and just like that, before we'd even stepped inside, I knew in my bones that this Christmas was going to be different, just not in the way I'd hoped. I've been raising Willa alone since she was 2 years old. Her father, Derek, decided one morning that he wasn't cut out for family life, packed a bag while I was at work and left a note on the kitchen counter. Not even a full page. Just a few sentences explaining that he needed to find himself, that he was sorry, that he hoped I would understand someday. I never understood. I still don't. He didn't ask for custody, didn't fight for visitation, didn't even send a birthday card. He just vanished from our lives like we were a chapter in a book he'd decided to stop reading. Last I heard, he was somewhere in Arizona, maybe California. I stopped keeping track years ago, so it's been just me and Willa, 6 years of solo parenting, 6 years of working full-time, stretching every paycheck, figuring out childcare and school pickups and doctor's appointments all on my own. 6 years of being both mother and father, of trying to fill a gap that shouldn't exist. We live in a 2-bedroom apartment on the east side of Columbus. It's small but clean. The walls are thin, and sometimes we can hear our neighbor's television through the bedroom wall, but Willa has her own room and I've made it nice for her. Purple walls because it's her favorite color. A bookshelf filled with the chapter books she's just starting to read on her own. A little desk by the window where she does her drawings. It's not much compared to Tamsin's house, but it's ours. It's stable. It's filled with love instead of judgment. I think about my father a lot, especially around the holidays. Harold Draper was a quiet man, a retired electrician who spent his weekends fishing and his evenings reading history books in his recliner. He wasn't flashy or loud. He didn't demand attention or need to be the center of every room. But he saw people. Really saw them. He saw me. When I was growing up, Tamsin was always the star. She was louder, prettier, more confident. She knew how to charm our parents, how to get what she wanted, how to make herself the center of every story. I was the quiet one, the one who stayed in her room reading, the one who got good grades but never made a fuss about it, the one who faded into the background while Tamsin shone. Our mother favored Tamsin openly. She paid for Tamsin's college while I took out loans. She paid for Tamsin's wedding, a lavish affair with 300 guests and a live band, while I got married at the courthouse and had cake at a restaurant afterward. She bought Tamsin a car for her 30th birthday. I got a card with a $20 bill inside. But Dad was different. Dad would find me in my room after Tamsin had dominated another family dinner, and he'd sit on the edge of my bed and tell me I was special in ways that didn't need to be loud. He'd take me fishing on Saturday mornings, just the two of us, and we'd sit in comfortable silence watching our lines bob in the water. He never made me feel like I was less than my sister. He made me feel like I was enough. When Willa was born, Dad fell in love with her instantly. He didn't care that she was quiet. He didn't mind that she took a while to warm up to people. He would sit with her for hours, letting her draw in his lap, reading her the same picture book over and over because she asked him to. He was patient with her in a way no one else in the family ever was. And then he died. Heart attack, sudden, no warning. One day he was there, solid and steady as he'd always been, and the next day he was gone. I got the call at work. I had to pull over on my way to the hospital because I couldn't see through my tears. By the time I got there, he was already gone. That was 3 years ago. Willa was 5. She still asks about Grandpa Harold sometimes, still has the stuffed elephant he gave her on her 4th birthday, still remembers how he would let her sit in his lap and watch cartoons, even though he pretended to think they were silly. After Dad died, everything changed. Mom moved in with Tamsin. The family dynamics shifted. Without Dad there to balance things out, Tamsin took over completely. She became the matriarch, the decision maker, the one who controlled when and where and how we gathered as a family. And I let her, because I was grieving, because I didn't have the energy to fight, because I kept hoping that maybe, without Dad there to protect me, my mother would finally step up, finally see me, finally treat my daughter with the same warmth she showed Griffin and Sutton. She didn't. Instead, she followed Tamsin's lead. If Tamsin rolled her eyes at something Willa did, Mom would purse her lips in silent agreement. If Tamsin made a comment about Willa being too quiet, Mom would nod along. If Tamsin excluded Willa from activities with her cousins, Mom would pretend not to notice. I drove 90 minutes each way to spend holidays with people who made my daughter feel like she didn't belong. I did it because I thought that's what family meant. I thought showing up, even when it hurt, was the right thing to do. I thought if I just kept trying, kept smoothing things over, kept being the peacekeeper, eventually they would accept us. This Christmas Eve, I still believe that. I walked into Tamsin's perfect house with my daughter's hand in mine, and I still had hope. Willa had worked so hard to prepare. She'd practiced her conversation starters. She'd made those beautiful ornaments. She was ready to try again, to put herself out there despite all the times she'd been hurt before. My brave, beautiful girl. She deserved so much better than what was waiting for her inside that house. She deserved a family that celebrated her sensitivity instead of punishing her for it. She deserved grandparents and aunts and cousins who saw her quiet nature as a gift, not a flaw. But I didn't know that yet. Not really. I still thought I could make this work. I still thought love was something I could earn from these people if I just tried hard enough. I was about to learn how wrong I was. Tamsin stepped aside to let us in, her eyes already scanning Willa like she was looking for something to criticize. My daughter stood frozen on the doormat, still holding her bag of handmade ornaments, waiting to be welcomed. "Shoes off," Tamsin said. "I just had the floors cleaned." No hello, no Merry Christmas, no hug for the niece she hadn't seen in months. Willa quickly bent down to remove her boots. Her hands were shaking slightly. I helped her, keeping my voice light and steady even though my chest was already tight with that familiar tension. "The house looks beautiful, Tamsin." "Of course it does. I've been preparing for weeks." She turned and walked toward the kitchen without waiting for us. "Mom's in the living room. Try not to let Willa touch anything." I took a deep breath, squeezed Willa's hand. We walked inside together. The house smelled like cinnamon and pine. A massive Christmas tree stood in the corner of the living room, decorated with matching silver and white ornaments. Everything coordinated, everything expensive, everything untouchable. Griffin and Sutton ran past us without a glance, chasing each other up the stairs. My mother, Francine, sat on the white sofa, a glass of wine in her hand. She smiled when she saw us, but she didn't get up. "There you are. Come give me a hug, Jolene." I walked over and bent down to embrace her. She patted my back twice, the way you might greet an acquaintance you hadn't expected to see. "Hi, Grandma," Willa said softly, still hovering near the doorway. My mother looked at her. "Hello, Willa. You've gotten tall." That was it. No invitation to come closer. No warmth. No recognition of the ornaments my daughter was clutching like a lifeline. Willa stayed where she was, uncertain what to do next. "Willa made presents for everyone," I said, trying to bridge the gap. "Show Grandma what you made, baby." Willa walked over slowly and pulled one of the tissue-wrapped ornaments from her bag. She held it out to my mother with both hands, her eyes hopeful and afraid. "I painted it myself. It has your name on it, see?" Francine took the ornament and unwrapped it. She looked at it for maybe 2 seconds. "That's nice, dear. Very crafty." She set it on the side table next to her wine glass and turned back to me. "Jolene, can you help Tamsin in the kitchen? She's been stressed all day." The ornament sat there on the table, abandoned. Willa stared at it, her face carefully blank in that way she'd learned to hide her hurt. I should have said something. I should have made my mother actually look at what my daughter had created. But I did what I always did. I smoothed it over. "Of course." "Willa, why don't you go find your cousins?" She shook her head quickly. "Can I stay with you, Mama?" Before I could answer, Tamsin's voice cut through from the kitchen. "Jolene, I need you in here now." I looked at Willa, looked at my mother, who was already reaching for her wine again. I made a decision I would regret for months afterward. "Stay here with Grandma, okay? I'll be right back." The look in Willa's eyes nearly broke me. But I went to the kitchen anyway. I left my daughter alone with a grandmother who couldn't be bothered to really see her. The kitchen was chaos. Tamsin barking orders at Boyd, who was trying to carve a ham, pots bubbling on every burner. Tamsin shoved a bowl of potatoes at me. "Mash these, and don't make them lumpy like last year." I bit my tongue, started mashing. For the next hour, I worked in that kitchen while Willa sat alone in the living room. Every few minutes, I would glance out to check on her. She was still on the floor near the Christmas tree, drawing in a small notebook she'd brought. My mother was on her phone. Griffin and Sutton never came back downstairs to play with her. Finally, Tamsin announced that dinner was ready. The formal dining room had been set with her best china. White plates with gold trim, crystal glasses, cloth napkins folded into elaborate shapes, place cards at every seat. I scanned the table, counted the Cards. Tamsin, Boyd, Mom, Griffin, Sutton, me. 6 place cards. 6 chairs. My stomach dropped. Tamsin, where does Willa sit? My sister didn't even look up from adjusting a centerpiece. There wasn't room. What do you mean there wasn't room? There are 8 chairs at this table. The seating is arranged, Jolene. She can eat in the kitchen. There's a perfectly good stool in there. She's 8 years old. She should sit with her family. Tamsin finally turned to face me. Her expression was cold, impatient, like I was being deliberately difficult. She makes everyone uncomfortable. She just sits there staring at people. It's unsettling. Griffin told me she gives him nightmares. She's shy. That's not a crime. It ruins the meal. Tamsin crossed her arms. Last year was unbearable. Everyone trying to make conversation with her while she just sat there like a statue. I won't have it again. I felt the room spinning. My mother had walked in behind me. She said nothing. Mom, I turned to her, desperate. Tell her this is ridiculous. Francine looked at the floor. Maybe it would be easier for Willa if she wasn't under so much pressure. The kitchen might be more comfortable for her. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own mother, siding with this cruelty. Tamsin walked toward the living room where Willa was still sitting with her notebook. I followed, my heart pounding. Willa! Tamsin's voice was sharp. Come with me. My daughter looked up, confused, hopeful. Maybe she thought her aunt was finally including her in something. Tamsin grabbed her arm and pulled her up. You're going to eat in the garage. There's a space heater out there. You can sit on the bench. Willa's face crumpled. The garage, but it's cold outside. Tamsin leaned down until she was eye level with my daughter, and then she said the words that would change everything. You ruin Christmas every year, Willa. Every single year. Maybe if you sat out there alone for a while, you'd learn how to behave like a normal child. My daughter burst into tears, and my mother stood in the doorway watching and said absolutely nothing. I stood there frozen as Tamsin walked my sobbing daughter through the kitchen and out the side door to the garage. I heard the door open, heard Tamsin's heels clicking on the concrete floor, heard her voice, muffled but still sharp, telling Willa to sit on the workbench and stay there until she learned some manners. Then the door closed, and Tamsin walked back into the kitchen, brushing off her hands like she'd just taken out the trash. Problem solved. Now can we please have a nice dinner? She walked past me into the dining room. Boyd followed her without making eye contact. Griffin and Sutton were already seated, completely unbothered by what had just happened to their cousin. My mother moved toward her chair, still silent, still refusing to look at me. I stood alone in that kitchen, my whole body trembling. 34 years of being the quiet one, the peacekeeper, the daughter who never made waves, who apologized for things that weren't her fault, who showed up year after year to be treated like an afterthought. 34 years of swallowing my anger and calling it maturity. Something cracked open inside me, not like an explosion, not like rage, more like ice breaking on a river in spring, cold and clear and unstoppable. I didn't go to the dining room. I didn't sit in the empty chair with my name on it. I didn't smooth things over or make excuses or pretend this was acceptable. I walked to the garage door and opened it. The cold hit me immediately. 28 degrees outside, and the garage wasn't much warmer. A tiny space heater sat in the corner, glowing orange but doing almost nothing against the freezing air. The concrete floor was like ice. The only light came from a single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. And there was my daughter, my beautiful, sensitive, 8-year-old daughter, sitting on a wooden workbench with a plate of food balanced on her lap, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs, her breath coming out in little white clouds. She looked up when I walked in. Her face was red and wet with tears. Her eyes were filled with a question she was too afraid to ask out loud. Why does everyone hate me? I crossed the garage in 3 steps and pulled her into my arms. She buried her face against my chest and cried harder, her small body shaking with the force of her grief. Mama, what did I do wrong? I tried so hard to be good. I practiced what I was going to say. I made everyone presents. Why does Aunt Tamsin hate me so much? I held her tighter. My own tears were falling now, hot against the cold air. You didn't do anything wrong, baby. Nothing. You are perfect exactly the way you are. Then why did she put me out here? Why didn't Grandma stop her? I didn't have an answer that would make sense to an 8-year-old. I didn't have an answer that made sense to me. How do you explain to a child that some people are just cruel? That family doesn't always mean love? That the people who are supposed to protect you sometimes choose not to? I sat down on that freezing workbench next to my daughter. I took off my coat and wrapped it around her shoulders, pulling her close against my body. The cold bit through my sweater immediately, but I didn't care. I'm not going back inside, Willa. I'm staying right here with you. She looked up at me, confused. But your dinner is in there. Everyone is waiting for you. Let them wait. You are more important than any dinner. You are more important than anyone in that house. And I am so sorry that I kept bringing you here. That's my fault, not yours, mine. We sat there together as the minutes ticked by. I could hear muffled laughter from inside the house, the clink of glasses, the sounds of a family enjoying Christmas Eve dinner while a little girl shivered in the garage, 20 feet away. Nobody came to check on us. Not once. My mother didn't open the door to see if Willa was okay. Tamsin didn't have a sudden change of heart. Boyd didn't grow a spine and stand up for his niece. We were forgotten, discarded, and that told me everything I needed to know. Willa eventually stopped crying. She ate a few bites of her cold food, then pushed the plate away. I held her while her breathing slowed, while the exhaustion of the evening pulled her toward sleep. At 9 o'clock, 3 hours after Tamsin had banished us to this freezing garage, Willa fell asleep against my shoulder. Her face was peaceful now, trusting. Even after everything, she still trusted me to keep her safe. I pulled out my phone with numb fingers. The screen glowed bright in the darkness. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I was looking for. Uncle Rowan, my father's younger brother, 71 years old, retired, living in Florida now. The only person in my family who had ever seen Tamsin clearly. The only person who had warned me years ago that my sister was not to be trusted. He'd also been a family attorney for 40 years. He'd helped my father write his will before he died. I pressed the call button. He answered on the first ring, even though it was late. "Jolene, is everything all right?" "No, Uncle Rowan, everything is not all right. I need you to tell me the truth about something." "What is it, sweetheart?" I looked down at my sleeping daughter, at her peaceful face, unaware of how badly the people inside that house had failed her. I thought about my father, about how he would have stormed into that dining room and carried Willa out of this house himself if he'd been alive. I thought about how different things might have been if he hadn't died. Dad's will. The house. I need to know what really happened. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When Rowan spoke again, his voice was heavy. "I was wondering when you'd finally ask. I tried to tell you at the funeral, but Tamsin pulled you away before I could finish. Tell me now." And he did. He told me everything. How my father had left explicit instructions for the house to be sold, with proceeds split equally between me and Tamsin. How my mother, as executor, had ignored those instructions completely. How she had transferred the deed directly to Tamsin 6 months after the funeral. How Rowan had warned them both that it was illegal. How they had done it anyway, betting that I was too beaten down to ever question it. They had stolen my inheritance, my father's final gift to me. And they had been living in that house, looking down on me for 6 years, knowing exactly what they had done. "I have copies of everything," Rowan said. "The original will, the transfer documents, all of it. I've been holding on to them, hoping you'd eventually want to know." I looked at the garage door, at the house beyond it, at the family that had just exiled my daughter to a freezing garage on Christmas Eve. "Send me everything, Uncle Rowan. Tonight." I carried Willa to the car at 10 o'clock that night. She was still half asleep, her arms wrapped around my neck, her face pressed against my shoulder. I buckled her into the back seat and covered her with the blanket I always kept in the trunk. I didn't go back inside to say goodbye. I didn't explain where we were going. I didn't give Tamsin or my mother the satisfaction of a confrontation. I just started the car and drove away from that house, watching it disappear in my rearview mirror. The drive home took 90 minutes. Willa slept the whole way. I used the time to think, to plan, to let the cold clarity settle into my bones. By the time I carried my daughter into our apartment and tucked her into bed, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I stayed up until 3 in the morning. Uncle Rowan emailed me everything. The original will, signed by my father in his careful handwriting. The deed transfer documents showing my mother's signature. The letters Rowan had sent warning them that what they were doing was illegal. All of it time-stamped, documented, undeniable. My father had left me half of that house. It was worth over $500,000 when he died. My share would have been $280,000, enough for a down payment on a real home for me and Willa, enough for her college fund, enough to give us the security we had been scraping by without for years, and they had stolen it. My own mother and sister had looked me in the eye at my father's funeral, accepted my grief, watched me struggle as a single mother, and never said a word about what they had done. I drafted an email to the probate attorney Rowan recommended. I attached every document. I explained what had happened. I asked what my options were. Then I closed my laptop and went to bed. Christmas morning, I didn't drive back to Tamsin's house for brunch. Instead, I took Willa to IHOP. We sat in a booth by the window and ordered chocolate chip pancakes with extra whipped cream. She was quiet at first, still processing what had happened the night before. "Mama, are you mad at me?" "Never, baby. I could never be mad at you." "Are we going to Aunt Tamsin's house today?" "No, we're not going there anymore, ever." She looked at me with wide eyes. "Really?" "Really. You and I are going to spend Christmas together. Just us. And it's going to be the best Christmas we've ever had." For the first time since the night before, she smiled. 1 week later, on New Year's Eve, a process server arrived at Tamsin's house. She was hosting her annual party, of course. 40 guests in cocktail attire, champagne flowing, the house sparkling with expensive decorations. The process server walked right up to the front door and rang the bell. Tamsin answered in a silver dress, champagne glass in hand, ready to greet another guest. Instead, she was handed a thick envelope containing a civil lawsuit, estate fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, unjust enrichment. My name was listed as the plaintiff. The amount I was seeking was clearly stated, my full share of the inheritance, plus interest and legal fees. I wasn't there to see it, but Uncle Rowan was. He had flown up from Florida specifically for this moment. He stood across the street watching as Tamsin's face went white, as she tore open the envelope and read the first page, as she started screaming my name loud enough for half her guests to hear. He called me right after. "It's done, sweetheart, she knows." 2 hours later, my phone started ringing. Tamsin first, her voice shaking with rage. "You're suing me? Your own sister? Over money? You're destroying this family over money?" I let her finish. Then I spoke calmly, clearly, without raising my voice. "No, Tamsin, I'm protecting my daughter from people who made her sit in a freezing garage on Christmas Eve. I'm holding you accountable for stealing my inheritance. And I'm done pretending that family means letting you treat us like garbage." I hung up before she could respond. My mother called next, crying, begging. "Please, Jolene, think about what you're doing. Tamsin could lose the house. Where will I live? Is that what you want?" "What I wanted was for you to protect my daughter. What I wanted was for you to tell me the truth about Dad's will. You chose Tamsin over me every single time. These are the consequences." I hung up on her, too. The case never went to trial. Tamsin's attorney reviewed the evidence and advised her to settle immediately. The documentation was airtight. There was no defense for what they had done. The house was sold in March. After legal fees and the split, I received $287,000. Tamsin and Boyd had to move to a smaller house in a different neighborhood. Their marriage started cracking under the strain. My mother stayed with Tamsin, of course, but the dynamic had shifted. The golden child had been exposed. The perfect facade had crumbled. My mother stopped calling after the settlement. No birthday card for Willa, no messages, nothing. She made her choice, and for the first time in my life, I felt relief instead of grief. 3 months later, I used part of my inheritance for a down payment on a house, a real house. 3 bedrooms, a big backyard, a quiet street with good schools. The day we moved in, Willa ran through every room, touching the walls like she couldn't believe they were real. She stopped in the doorway of her new bedroom, purple walls just like her old room, but bigger, with a window seat where she could sit and draw. "Mama, is this really ours?" "All ours, baby. Nobody can take it away. Nobody can make us leave." She turned to me with tears in her eyes. "I don't ever want to see Aunt Tamsin again." I knelt down and took her hands in mine. "You never have to. Ever. I promise." She threw her arms around me and held on, tight. And for the first time in months, I felt her relax completely. The fear that had lived in her body since Christmas Eve finally started to let go. We were home, we were safe, and we were free. 1 year has passed since that Christmas Eve in the garage. Willa is 9 now. She's in 4th grade at her new school, just a 10-minute walk from our house. She's made 2 close friends, girls named Harper and Delia, who come over for sleepovers and spend hours in Willa's room, drawing and making up stories. Her therapist says she's doing remarkably well. The anxiety is still there, but it doesn't control her anymore. She raises her hand in class. She orders her own food at restaurants. She laughs out loud without covering her mouth. Last month, she showed me a project she'd been working on in secret. A handmade comic book, 12 pages long, drawn and colored entirely by herself. The story was about a girl named Grace who had the power to protect other kids from mean adults. Grace wore a cape made of blankets and carried a flashlight that could reveal the truth about people who pretended to be nice but were actually cruel. She called the hero Garage Girl. I sat on her bed and read every page while she watched my face nervously, waiting for my reaction. When I finished, I pulled her into my arms and held her for a long time. "This is incredible, baby. You're incredible. Do you think Grandpa Harold would have liked it?" "I think he would have loved it. I think he would have asked you to make him his own copy so he could show everyone at the fishing dock." She smiled at that. A real smile, bright and unguarded. The kind of smile I rarely saw when we were still trying to be part of a family that didn't want us. I think about my father often. I keep his photograph on my nightstand, the one from his 60th birthday where he's laughing at something off camera. I like to imagine he's watching us somehow, that he knows I finally stood up for myself and for Willa, that he's proud of the home we've built. He used to say something that I never fully understood until now. Peace isn't always quiet, Jolene. Sometimes peace is a door you close and lock behind you. I spent my whole life trying to keep the peace with people who didn't deserve it. I thought love meant endurance. I thought being a good daughter and a good sister meant absorbing every insult, excusing every cruelty, showing up again and again no matter how badly I was treated. I thought if I just tried hard enough, they would eventually see me, accept me, love me the way I needed to be loved. I was wrong. Some people don't want peace. They want control. They want someone to look down on so they can feel better about themselves. They want a scapegoat for their own unhappiness, and they will use you and your children for that purpose as long as you let them. The only peace I found was the peace that came from walking away. 6 months after the lawsuit settled, I received a letter in the mail. The return address was Tamsin's new house. For a moment, I felt my stomach clench with the old, familiar dread, but I opened it anyway. It was from my mother. I expected an apology, some acknowledgement of what she had done, what she had allowed to happen, maybe even a request to see Willa, to try to rebuild some kind of relationship. Instead, it was a request for money. Tamsin's new house needed a new roof. The settlement had depleted their savings. My mother was asking if I could help out, for the sake of family, for the sake of everything we had been through together. I read the letter once. Then I walked to the fireplace, dropped it in, and watched it burn. Willa was sitting at the kitchen table doing homework. She looked up when she saw the flames. "What was that, Mama?" "Just some old paper, baby." "Are you okay?" I looked at my daughter, at her bright eyes and her curious face, at the homework spread in front of her and the drawings pinned to the refrigerator and the purple backpack hanging by the door. I looked at the home we had built together, the life we had created out of nothing but determination and love. "I'm perfect, sweetheart. Absolutely perfect." She smiled and went back to her homework. I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat down across from her, watching her work, feeling a peace I had never known before. My sister thought putting my daughter in a freezing garage would teach her a lesson about how to behave. She was right. That night taught me everything I needed to know. It taught me that I had spent 34 years protecting people who didn't deserve protection. It taught me that my silence was their permission to keep hurting us. It taught me that family is not a word that automatically earns your loyalty. Family is a choice. Family is the people who show up for you, who protect you, who love you exactly as you are. And sometimes, the family you're born into isn't your real family at all. That Christmas Eve, I sat on a freezing garage floor with my daughter and let her see the truth. I let her see that her grandmother wouldn't come, that her aunt felt no remorse, that the people who should have loved her had chosen cruelty instead. But I also let her see something else. I let her see that her mother would never leave her, that I would sit in the cold with her for as long as it took, that I would burn down every relationship, every expectation, every obligation, before I would let anyone make her feel worthless again. Some houses aren't worth saving. Some peace isn't worth keeping. Some doors need to be closed and locked forever so you can finally breathe. And some garages, cold and dark as they are, become the place where you finally find your way home. If this story touched your heart, if you've ever had to walk away from people who were supposed to love you, I want you to know that you're not alone. Choosing yourself, choosing your children, choosing peace over dysfunction is not selfish. It's survival, it's strength, and it's the first step toward building the life you actually deserve. If this story moved you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment below and tell me your story. I read every single one. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss another video. Your support means the world to me and helps me keep telling these stories. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And remember, the family you choose will always matter more than the family you were given. Until next time, take care of yourself. You're worth it.